pay the penalty. Well, if that's the policy, why so much hypocrisy? All the massacre in the West Bank and Gaza, nobody answer for that. The recent atrocities against the Lebanese, nobody answer for that. But somebody got to be responsible when they use their napalm bomb up in Vietnam. Nobody answer for that. When they use nuclear power in Hiroshima, nobody answer for that. But somebody got to be responsible. Yes, somebody should be held accountable.
DJ Soapaholic.
Mass genocide in Rwanda. Tutsi died like in the days of the plague. Most of them Hutu leaders were tried and convicted in the Hague. Now it is justice for crimes in Africa. Justice must be stopped short, but too much partiality. All the genocide in the days of apartheid. Nobody answer for that. I'm sure you remember the Sharpeville massacre. Nobody answer for that. But somebody.
Yes, somebody has to be responsible. At this point in time, we get into the main event. And the main event this afternoon features two gentlemen who Grenada knows very well. Adrian Thomas, as Brother John mentioned before, Adrian Thomas is presently the interim political leader of the National Democratic Congress. And we also have with us Phillip Alexander. He is the caretaker for the St. Andrew Northwest Constituency. I got it right, yeah?
Yeah.
That's Brush Grove area?
Yes, man.
Yeah.
So it's a pleasure to have you two gentlemen here this afternoon.
I am not seeing you, comrades. So you need to, I'm not seeing you at all on the screen. So you need to help me out there. Okay, great. I'm seeing you now. Okay, great.
You would not be seeing me.
Okay, good.
We're seeing you live and in living color, man. All right. So let's start with the interim political leader, Adrian Posier.
Acting, Pablo, acting.
Acting leader.
Acting, sorry, the acting. Well, I don't know. Is there a difference between acting and interim?
Yeah, there is.
Okay. Well, maybe you'll clarify that for me. In any event, you have that. The last time you were here, you were the deputy political leader. We have seen the resignation of the then political leader, Franca Bonadine, from that position, and you have assumed that new status. Tell us, what's it been like? What has been your agenda since then, and what's the agenda going forward?
Well, let me say a pleasant good evening to you and your co-host, Brother John Callis. It's always a pleasure to be on your program. I'm happy that I get the opportunity in the space of maybe just a month. I'm here the second time, and it means that it seems as though this could be a very good atmosphere environment for I to dissemination my thinking, my role as leader of the National Democratic Congress, and to reach out to the wide audience, the whole wide world that you are broadcasting to. So I must say good afternoon to you and your audience tuning in.
Well, if I may interject here, this is the comfort zone, right? So you have to become.
I'm very confident.
I'm hoping that we don't have any interruptive showers as we had the first time.
Well, last time, yeah. Oh yes, it was thunder shower. Well, I'm in my quarters now. The last.
In your quarters, okay.
Quarters. So I hope that the sun is very bright outside here. I mean,
okay.
The hotel is looking nice and firm.
Yeah, so tell us what's the agenda? What has it been like for you since you've assumed that position, and what's the agenda going forward? And if I may add, given the fact that, as you said, you are the interim, you're the acting political leader, and in order for the party to get to the status of having a political leader, it has to get to General Council, where the date for convention will be set, and at convention there will be an election. Given the situation that we have right now, what's the prospects for that as you on to all of that? So can you just give us that in a nutshell?
Well, in a nutshell, the National Democratic Congress isn't headless at this point in time. And it isn't headless. I am the acting political leader, and by virtue of accepting the deputy political leader at the last convention, I was prepared for any problem that occur, whether the leader cannot make it or cannot continue. I automatically would have thought to play the role of the political leader, and even in the absence of the political leader. What I am doing presently is acting in that role, and come next convention we will be contesting not only the leadership position, but all positions in the national executive will be contested, and the leadership is also part of it. So in the meantime and between time, I'm not holding the position until a leader is informed. I'm acting as the political leader, and I'm doing all that is necessary that a political leader will. And that is that's the role I'm playing.
So what has been the experience thus far, and what are some of the undertakings of note that you would have been engaged in?
Pablo, I have been in close sockets with the political leader. I am quite aware of some of the activities she was involved in. I'm quite aware of some of the problems that the party faced. And one of the problems that I'm trying to tackle at this point in time is to change the concept of the general public in regards to the outlook on our party in regards to we are not active enough, we are not speaking out on the national issues enough, we are not seen, we are not being heard. So you will realize maybe for the last 6 weeks we have been in your face on the national front on many and all the necessary issues that may have confronted us. When we do not have the issues to deal with per se, we have a lot in our kit, the National Democratic Congress, to really let the public know about ourselves, what we intend to do, and so we are not only reactionaries per se, but we are also advocating our programs and in other words what will be offered in the next election. So we have a lot on our hands, and I'm going to hustle your program today because I said to you that I will not make it more than an hour because we have a visit, a very important visit to make at 3:30 today, but I'll make it at 4. So we are not sitting on. National Democratic Congress is alive, and we are presenting our program today.
Speaking of that, before I get Brother Alexander to come into the conversation, I want my technical operator to play me an audio. No, to play me a clip. To play me a clip that I have dubbed linking, and we'll get back to you on the other side of that clip. Brother John?
As a nation, we have to take this land use policy serious. We must have areas in Grenada. We must have areas in Grenada where we
Could you bring up the volume? Is it possible to bring the
areas like
volume
what
up
I'm
to
seeing
the
here,
television?
people cannot build houses there. And just like how we're treating the people in Maki and Subiz, where building houses by the seafront is becoming very disastrous, we have to consider people building houses on the western side where there are a lot big boulders hanging above them. We have to do something about it as a state. I really hope that the Ministry of Works will attend to this matter quite quickly. I know that they may have to mobilize resources and so on, but 24 hours is maybe too long for this house, for this stone to be, this boulder to still be there.
On the 9th day of January 2021, standing in front of this sign, we are noting this. Because today you are seeing with a mere 10 to 12 feet between the road and the coastline as it stands. That will significantly affect access to the hill area. You imagine what will happen in a year's time if someone in the hill area is possibly going to get sick. Where will the ambulance get to them? Appreciating what is happening here in terms of this access road. Will the ambulance go all the way around to Shrew Shantimel, through Davie and come back to get somebody from here? Understanding and appreciating that on the other end, coming from the Davie Shantimel side, is a broken bridge that is about to give way at this time. That is what we are facing today. Note my words, on the 9th day of January 2021, this is happening in Grenada. With no sense from the government, no sense from the MP for the area to make representation. A petition of over 200 residents was signed recently to have a meeting with the MP for the area. After many efforts and discussions were held, nothing has transpired from that. That is the reality.
This is a man-made disaster, and I really wish and hope that the government will act a little more mature and a little more, show a little more urgency in dealing with the matter. I think the people in St. Patrick, they are crying out, and they need to hear from the government a little more. They need to know exactly how much more of this they can take, because for the last 2 or 3 years, based on the information that I have gathered from the people in the community, they have lost as much as 12 feet or more, 12 to 20 feet of land in some areas. And they are anticipating that in the next 2 or 3 years, they will lose another 25 feet. They do not have that kind of land before they make the road, the main road, that will take people from the hill area home. And I think that the government needs to pay some more attention. They need to come and address the issue, and at least sit down and discuss the issue with the people, so at least they can have some confidence in regards to how that matter is being treated. It is a project that they have not completed as yet. The people in the community, they are saying that if the project has been completed, it will create more disaster. In other words, they're trying to save one end and they're creating a disaster on the other end.
Yes, Mr. Thomas. There we had that clip with your voice, and it appears that you were at two different locations speaking on 2 different issues. Can you elaborate a bit more on what your findings were?
Well, Pablo, in the first instance, we went to go off and to empathize with the people there who were affected by the big boulder. I mean, where that boulder came from, it would have been, to see where that boulder came from and to see how many other boulders that have the potential to create this kind of destruction, it's a bit frightening. And there are many areas in Grenada that have this kind of threat to the many villages. And it is something that we have to address. We cannot wait and allow a second Kutubeli event to happen again, where 9 people were crushed into a bus. The most precise event that I've ever seen, where this boulder came down and a bus traveling at top speed was crushed to the ground in the middle of it. And I remember seeing them scrape up that bus with the people in it and put it in a truck, and I could not see the bus in the truck it's submerged in the truck that you could not have even seen it. So we do not want events to happen like that again in Grenada. I had the opportunity to talk to the people who were affected in both houses. The first house, the stone actually passed through the house and there was no one there. It bounced in the middle of the road, creating a big crater like it's something like a crater in a volcano, but I mean road size. And then we had the stone bumping in the road and landing on the wall house. Pablo, this my blood run cold and I'm getting cold bumps here now. It's unfortunate that situations like that still occurring in Grenada, but nature has a way of taking its course. We just have to be mindful and make the proper assessment and advise our people as we go forward. We know there are people that the physical plan may advise people accordingly, and sometimes we have political interference, defying the instructions of the authority and giving people the green light for the sake of a vote to do things. But as a nation, we have to step up and make sure that those things don't happen again. We have to make sure that we secure our people. You cannot be lying down sleeping in the night and you're not too sure if you're going to get up in the morning because of the threat that exists. So it was not a nice scene at all. But we have to see how we can help our people and advise them. And I hope that the authorities will be looking into the matter and see how we can eliminate or mitigate whatever problems that may occur. My visit to the breakwater system in Satez, again, this was my second visit, Pablo, and from the first to the second, it's disastrous. I mean, many people had have already left the area. Others have lost portion of the house, but they have nowhere to go, so they are still living in the next portion that has not been affected as yet. And I went there Saturday, Sunday morning. I got a few clips in terms of how the way the water was behaving. The tide was very high Sunday morning. That's just 24 hours after I left, and the water was getting under people's house in the area. The few people who were left there. I saw one gentleman had to move his shop on 3 occasions, trying to fight nature. Every time the land is being eroded, where the shop was, he has to move back, and he continues to move back, and he's so frustrated now that he could not even talk to me, and that is his only livelihood. I think the government is very, very slow in moving to see how they can rectify the problem and fix it, and they need to step up that. We have witnessed in our conversation that there is still that element of discrimination. There's still that element of partisan politics in this whole thing. It's all about which party you support. I mean, this is so frightening in Grenada that it's unbelievable that in times of disaster, politicians want to know which political party you support in order for them to help you. This is not good for the country. It's not good for the region. And the Grenadian people don't live like that. We live, I mean, growing up in Grenada, Pablo, it was all about community spirit. It was all about unity. It was all about maroon. I remember my grandmother cooking in the evening, and she's taking out 2 special plates of food, one for each neighbor. Her motto was cook as much as possible. You do not know who's going to pass. So that's the way we live. What is happening today is not a reflection of the way we live in the past. Yes, I know time of change, but those are aspects that we need to really and truly bring back in the village, and the politician must be leading that way. If they are not leading in this way, our society could be doomed. But I'm not. I can see changes coming, and we will get back to those golden days.
Yes, I grew up in a household like that. My mama was that kind of person. She always had something there in case somebody passed. You know, I want to get back to you in a little while about because you're also the caretaker for St. David. So I want to get back to you on that. But it's time that I bring in Mr. Phillip Alexander into the conversation. Welcome, Mr. Alexander, to the comfort zone. And you are the caretaker for St. Andrew's, St. Andrew Northwest constituency. What's happening in your constituency? What is the administration doing? We've had a budget presentation, and we have a new Minister of Agriculture, and we're hearing much talk about the need for us to get more involved in agriculture, and with St. Andrew being being carrying the tagline as the breadbasket of the country. What are you seeing going forward? What's happening in your community and in your constituency?
Right. Pablo, thanks for having me. This is my first time on this program.
Yes.
And I'm really happy to be here to share with you and the general public. So I want to greet persons locally and persons in the diaspora. I really wish to take the opportunity to wish them all the best for the new year and Godspeed, as we go forward. Comrade, it is interesting that you ask about agriculture in this instance, but I want to pick up just a little bit on where the party leader just left out.
Okay.
As the person responsible for physical development or the spokesperson in the party, I want to take this opportunity to challenge the government of Grenada. And in my own professional capacity, Pablo, you may or may not know, that has been a passion of mine. And I remember when the issue of Cote Bailey, the boulder came down, at one time I was director of lands and surveys, and I actually had to appear at the inquest in Guelph, in the magistrate court, and do a presentation there. So I'm very aware as to the challenges that we face. And the court, the inquest and the court was very clear what should happen. But you know what? The government of Grenada has not taken on board several of the recommendations back then and even now. And let me assure you, the NNP administration has been, in large measure, the government of Grenada for the last 25, 30 years, even except one or two stints by the NDC. And those periods have been marred by some of the most unauthorized development in terms of physical infrastructure in our country. They go through the records, and the records are there. As I said, my own professional work has taken me to understand and get an opportunity to view the NNP administration in operation when they sit in government. And this continues up to today. So I really want to urge the people of Grenada to really take a look at some of these really fly-by-night and unauthorized development that has been permitted or allowed to go on without the government of Grenada taking steps. Some of these developments, of course, have been authorized on the altar of political expediency. They're not in keeping with what should happen, but they have been allowed to go ahead because of some political efforts by the NNP administration. And those we must really, really, really take a look at. And I'm very disheartened by what we continue to see. And I want to say particularly, I don't know how the MP for St. Patrick West could sit comfortably in his house at night. When I saw last Saturday how residents in the area are struggling not to eke out a living in the circumstance, but just to survive in that environment where the houses, parts of the houses, as the party leader said, have actually been destroyed by the sea already. And the other part, I actually went back. I visited the site on Saturday afternoon gone. I went back there Sunday to take a group of persons for them to see what is happening in our society. I was that disturbed. So I mean, this is the first time I'm speaking about it publicly, and I was that disturbed by what I saw Saturday, that I took some people from the SANW area on the site so that they themselves could see what is happening. Pablo, together we must make a difference. But two of my two daughters accompany me on that trip. And let me assure you, I wish to have something different for them in our community and in our society. And we owe it to our children and our children's children to stand up
and make sure that these things does not continue. Rest assured, if we allow it to continue, then we could all go and lie down in the center cemetery and let a man take a D9 and cover us. Because, I mean, we really would have given up. I am so disturbed by this. And I genuinely believe that the people of Grenada need to ask questions of the government of Grenada in this matter. So thanks for having me comment on this matter. I also want to take the opportunity to just to mention that agriculture, as you indicated, SANW still continues to struggle to build a different economic circumstances for ourselves. The government of Grenada is playing a very limited role in doing so, in adding value to our agriculture. Most of what is taking place is individual farmers and very personalized efforts. The national effort in agriculture leave a lot to be desired. And I mean, there's a myriad of things that we can mention, starting from marketing board, starting from markets for your products, starting from inputs and the costs thereof. There are many things, and I'm urging that I want to welcome the new Minister of Agriculture to this position, and I hope that his input will be felt, not just in SANW, but in the nation as a whole. So thank you very much.
Speaking of agriculture and the inputs and so, there's been lots of conversation about the amount of money that we spend on poultry, that poultry is a main component of the Grenadian diet. And we spend significant sums of money on poultry coming from overseas. We see recently that we've started bringing in poultry from Belize, another CARICOM country. And I know that government has, there is supposed to be a poultry policy that should allow for our poultry producers to have a share of the market. One of the concerns that people have is the cost of production. Is there any likelihood of there being a reduction, or what are the steps that need to be taken in order to bring about that reduction in the cost of production so as to make our homegrown poultry farmers more competitive in the market so that they can take advantage of that share of the market that is supposed to be there available to them as a consequence of the poultry policy. Can you speak to that?
Right. Well, Pablo, thanks for inviting me to speak on this issue. Let me tell you, first of all, I think it is important that we recognize that the way the poultry industry at the moment operates is with very limited support from the government of Grenada. And that is something that the Poultry Association has been crying out for assistance.
Before you go ahead, well, one of the reasons why I choose to speak on that too, and to speak about the whole issue of cutting cost of production, because we see a lot being made right now by government about how the WRB arrangement that existed was interfering with people's ability to produce, and the whole cost of energy and that kind of thing. So if they are so concerned about cutting the cost of energy, what are the steps? Shouldn't that be a concern for our government, given the fact that we spend millions in poultry importation? I just wanted to interject that.
Okay, sure.
Because that is an issue that we have to speak about in a little while.
Indeed. Yes. And let me assure you that that is an issue that will go a lot wider than just the surface that we might be talking about it now in relation. So let me go back, continue on the issue of the poultry and its production and the cost. The government of Grenada has, as I said, lent very little support to the private persons in the poultry industry in Grenada. Very limited. And in cases where they have been mainly to persons who are allowed to bring in material for some of the construction. That is the limited extent, by and large, to which they have acted. The Poultry Association has been making significant efforts through the members, and they have made a lot of representation along with the poultry policy that is now adopted by the state. What has not been forthcoming is the support by the government of Grenada, especially when it comes to the input cost and the issue of quota and allocations of the cost of meat and poultry that we import. Those has been lacking and limited, and by and large, that is where the greatest impact can and will be had. Because what these people are asking for is support to make that difference. They're not asking you to give them for free. They're asking the government of Grenada to work with them to achieve lower costs of production so that they can be competitive. Because by and large, Pablo, we must appreciate that what we are importing as poultry are very often in large measure subsidized by governments overseas. Governments in the United States and Brazil and so where we import large amounts of our poultry from are in very often subsidizing the cost of their farmers. So that is why very often they can export to us at far lower cost than we can produce here for. So we must recognize that, and as a state we must take action to correct that and to protect our own. Talking about protecting our own, you imagine what is happening on this issue of Grenlec, and I hear people wanting to make excuses to lower the cost of production and the cost of electricity to the people of Grenada. The electricity cost to the people of Grenada can only be improved upon if we continue as a people to recognize that we have to make the requisite adjustments in our approaches to development that would allow us to lower the cost of electricity. It would not be a wishy-washy approach. And that is why the Grenlec issue must be taken on board as a national approach. And we're going to deal with that down the road. So I just want to leave it there for now.
Pablo, apparently Pablo just took it for a little while. If I may chime in here, the whole question of this administration will to move agriculture and to really invest seriously in agriculture is cause for concern. We have over 300 active poultry farmers in Grenada who are commercialized, but we have quite a few subsistence farmers doing the things in the backyard, selling for the villages and so on. So the will of the people to do serious poultry in Grenada is there. And all they need is the political will of the government to really support. I mean, for years, the farmers have been crying out for something to be done about the high cost of feed, which is a very, I mean, I was trained in agriculture, so I know feeding chicks at Adelaide. They're constantly feeding it in the coop or in the house, poultry house. But if you cannot control that cost and it's beyond you, then it becomes a burden. When the local chicken has to be sold for much more than the imported one, then really and truly it's a matter of people buying consciously for this to survive. We must, as a people, create the atmosphere where the local farmers is quite competitive and is given fair competition with the imported chicken. So just to add to what Phillip is saying, I think the government needs to step in there and see how they can help the farmers. And not only the feed that is expensive, but really and truly the infrastructure cost, the cost to put up houses. I mean, if you're serious in agriculture and you want to raise 10,000 birds, that is the kind of production that you're looking for. I mean, a farmer in his backyard doing 25 birds once every 6 weeks, or that in itself would not give us the kind of the amount of poultry meats that we need to supply the local market with. So again, the government has to be serious about agriculture, and poultry is a major part of agriculture, especially to the Caribbean people. Trinidad and Barbados were able to be self-sufficient in that area. And I don't think that the material conditions in any of those states is different to that in Grenada. And if they are there, I don't see it that difficult for we to get there.
I believe St. Lucia also has a very significant poultry production, because they have allocated a certain quota the market for the farmers. Speaking of the feed and so, we had former agricultural minister Michael Batiste on one of the programs on GMFM sometime not so long ago. And he is very passionate about the poultry industry also. And he indicated that during his time as Minister of Agriculture, they did some experimentation in feed production using corn and using the remains from fish and so, because we know, we do a lot of deep water fishing and so on. And he is saying that it is possible for us to begin to produce a certain quantity of the feed that can help to cut the production cost, can help to cut the cost of feed for our farmers. Do you have any understanding or any knowledge about that? Another thing that was mentioned too is the whole issue of having a centralized slaughtering commodity, a slaughtering facility, so that those small producers that you mentioned, the people who do in a 50, a 60, a 100 birds or so, that when they reach maturity, they don't have to be sitting there waiting for one to sell here and there. They pick the 60 birds up, or the 80 birds up, or the 100 birds up, and they bring it to that central facility where they get a check, a lump sum check for the production that goes into the big cluster of poultry production and so. What do you think of these ideas? Open question.
Pablo, if I may come in here. The question of, I knew that Dr. Bowen Lewison was very integral in doing research, and there's a gentleman by the name of Augustine David. When they were in Ministry of Agriculture, they were doing some research in terms of complementing the feed that they usually use with some raw material that we could have get locally, and at least you would have been able to cut costs. But again, you have to do proper research and make sure that it is in sync with the cost of production and turnovers and so on. So that in itself, I don't know where it is now, because I left the Ministry of Agriculture sometime in 2009, so I'm not up to date. But I can always find out if they're doing any. I don't think much research is being done in the Ministry of Agriculture right now. The Ministry of Agriculture, how it used to be 10 years ago, it is really and truly not in the best of shape at this point in time. Many of the people who are properly trained have retired, some have left, and the Ministry, the personnel in the Ministry of Agriculture, much is desired. But Pablo, just to comment on the question of slaughtering and so on, specialization must be a very important aspect in going forward. You cannot have one small farmer rearing the birds, have to buy a pluck machine to detach the feathers. He has to cut, package, throw it in his vehicles, go and look for a market and find out if this supermarket wants. Run around the country for the entire day looking for sale, and he may not get all. If he doesn't get all the birds sold, he will have to come back and start thinking about storage facilities, and this in itself is bad business. As a nation, we have to organize our agriculture. The small, like what I observe in Trinidad, there are business places that contract farmers. The role of the farmers is to keep the birds for 6 weeks, and after 6 weeks, the birds obtain reasonable weight, and the people at the business places will come, collect the live birds, and bring it into their slaughterhouse, or contract some slaughterhouse to feather the birds and cut it in parts, package it, and then marketing company will come and take it, and everybody play their own part. We have been asking the farmers to be jack of all trades in Grenada. That can't happen. We mama guy ourselves, and we're still involved in subsistence farming. Specialization has to be a very important aspect. Grenada is very small, 100,000 people.
You have to be honest.
One major slaughterhouse. All the farmers in Grenada has to do is to rear the birds for 6 weeks, send it to the slaughterhouse, and somebody else take the job from there. In the slaughterhouse, they package it nicely with nice, just like how it has been packaged from Brazil and those other
Could say that we have to repurchase it. Do you know that if we pass legislation that change,
the audio is coming through. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Right. So we can compete if we go in that direction where the farmers have somebody's taking care of packaging, and then marketing board, which was formed for this for passing the products to the various hotels to the consumers. They have a role to play in that. So, and I'm saying this for poultry, but many other aspects of agriculture can be looked at in that.
Yeah. While you're on the table, you're the caretaker for the constituency of St. David. We spoke earlier on about the challenges faced by the people in St. Patrick West constituency with the breakwater. We saw last year there were concerns about development that was taking place in your constituency that was a hindrance for fishermen and so having access to the beach and that kind of thing. And we saw the devastation that had taken place with the Lassages project. What can you tell us about the state of things in that regard right now in your constituency?
Pablo, thanks for asking that question also, because this I will be visiting a little problem area in St. David this afternoon. I wouldn't talk about it as yet, but you're going to hear about it maybe next week. The question of Lassages, I must say, well, let's take Lassages first. That's where we had the residents in the area had a little problem in terms of having access to the beach. I had the privilege to attend that particular meeting with the owner of the properties, the people in the community, and Pablo, this was one of the most amicable, civilized meetings that I've attended, where the people in the village spoke, the owners spoke, and we were able to come to a conclusion that access will be granted 2 days after access was granted. And this is what this is the kind of atmosphere the people in St. David is desire of, consultation. And if the people and the owners of the business can come together and talk about it, then this is good business. This is civilization. This is life in a community. And I've been calling on the government that they need to consult. Transparency has to be part of the game. You cannot be making deals and imposing things on people in the various community. This was able to be solved through the community. Unlike the other project in Lassages with 6 Seasons, that project started before the people demonstrated. Again, the people was able to get the owners of the project into a meeting and they were able to discuss. At that meeting, the owners agreed in principle to replant the mangrove. And this kind of discussion was a discussion in the right direction. Whether this become reality or not, we have to follow. But I think people are still concerned because they are following the development of the project and the progress that they are making there. And people are very concerned in terms of the developers infringing on the rights of the people in regards to passing the map that they should be where they should be walking in regards to going into the seawater and all those sort of things. And you know the lake was there. That is in itself a concern. And I'm yet to hear that the government has been calling any meeting to discuss the matter. They're just imposing things on the people, and this is not nice. So we are concerned in St. David's about that aspect of it. I will be also visiting, well, I could talk about it now, but there's an area in St. David that we have a serious problem with the sewage system, whereby there's, I mean, the people have been talking about that for the last 5 years, 6 years or more. In other words, I was speaking to an individual yesterday, and what he said to me is that although 100 houses were built there, they never anticipate that each house will have 5, 6, 7 people. So in other words, you build a facility to accommodate maybe 100 persons, but you needed to build a facility to accommodate 100 families, because families will develop in any case, and that was not done. So the size of the facility cannot accommodate the amount of people living there, and it's posing a serious health problem. So I will be visiting that in a while, and I'll be looking at it. I'll be speaking to the people in the village and to see how we can solve this problem and help in the process of solving this problem. I have written to the MP in the particular in St. David on 2 occasions. He has not responded on any occasion, and I will be writing to him again when I visited this evening. But the people in SANW, they know what they want, they know where they want to go, and they are not happy at this point in time with the kind of representation that they are getting.
Wow, 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 wow. It's a never-ending story with that administration and the lack of accountability.
Yes.
You know, and the manner in which they treat with the citizenry, that, you know, they don't have an obligation really to liaise with people and to share appropriate information or to consult with us. It's like people are just supposed to accept whatever it is that they hand out. We have, excuse me, we see that the Grenlec issue is one of the major talking points around, and to get us into, we can't have this conversation this afternoon and don't get into that one. And to get started on this one, I want, Brother John, you should have that lined up for me, honesty. So if you can play honesty to get us into the Grenlec conversation, Brother John, honesty. Is there a problem with it, Brother John?
Okay, come on. Let me pull it up for you.
You have to be honest. And there are a number of clauses there that will trigger repurchase. Do you know that if a hurricane came and destroyed everything, Grenlec could say that we have to repurchase it? Do you know that if we pass legislation that change any aspect, so what we did, what caused us to be where we are today? We have said that under the current monopoly arrangement, it is stifling the growth of the economy. Businesses cannot invest because we have one of the highest rates of electricity in CARICOM, and that can be checked and verified. We engage WRB with respect to renewable energy and making other changes. After 26 years of operating a monopoly, there is no evidence that WRB was willing to move to renewable energy and to open the sector to independent power producers. No evidence of that, because they have an agreement which gave them the sole right.
As you heard Mr. St. Louis, who was then in government, say here today, he said that there was nothing in Grenlec. There was nothing. It was flat in terms of equipment, in terms of management, in terms of reliability, because Gregory Bowen and company wrecked it. This is the Warren report. When it was commissioned, the line minister was Dr. Keith Mitchell. The report was published in March of 1991. The National Democratic Congress came into office in 1990. I think it was around June 1990. So this report was issued less than a year after the NDC came into office. So there wasn't an inordinate delay in the Mr. Worrell issuing his report.
Okay.
And the report is clear as to what state Gregory Bowen had Grenlec in. From the time Grenlec, the company, was set up in Grenada in 1960, it was a monopoly. So this argument that is being made that WRB was given a monopoly is insincere, because Grenlec was always the sole supplier and distributor of electricity, generator and distributor of electricity in Grenada. So the monopoly was always in existence as a company. What caused it to be in such a state is because it was a monopoly run entirely by the state. What the arrangement in 1994 did, it retained the monopoly, yes, but it spread the shareholding across a number of people, including government and ordinary Grenadians, and WRB, who brought in their expertise and transformed the company to what we know it today. The next point Minister Joseph mentioned is that a hurricane, he used as an example, certain things will trigger a repurchase event under the share purchase agreement. That's correct. We had a devastating hurricane in 2004 in Hurricane Ivan. It didn't trigger a repurchase agreement. In that circumstance, they didn't say repurchase the shares because everything is flat on the ground. In fact, one of the things that was set up in Grenlec after WRB came in was a hurricane relief fund, where a certain portion of the profits was set aside every year, and the hurricane relief fund was tapped into to rebuild after Hurricane Ivan.
So we see here that the deal has taken place. There has been the repurchase, whatever terminology that is appropriate, because there's even been conversation about what's the appropriate terminology. I don't know. But in any event, we've gotten to this stage, and we see that the government has not been forthcoming on that issue. There you have Minister Joseph making certain claims that we see right here has been debunked by Ms. Claudia Joseph. The whole issue that if a hurricane passed, they had to repurchase the company. And we went through Hurricane Ivan and Emily, and that didn't happen. The same thing to do with renewables. I understand that you, Mr. Alexander, you're the spokesman on that issue. What can you share with us as regards that deal? Because up to yesterday, Mr. Boatswain, Anthony Boatswain, standing and speaking in Parliament, he was admonishing the NDC and saying that that is the worst deal ever that a Grenadian government has ever gotten into. Can you share with us on that issue, and maybe even share with us some deals that you know of, that is comparable, or worse deals? Is that the worst deal that any government has gotten into?
Well, let me say, Pablo, I want to say it quite clear. This cannot be, it has never been, and the Grenlec deal as negotiated by the National Democratic Congress government back there in 1994 was the best deal available at that time, given the circumstances that existed.
So it was like selling our own car, right?
Well, I mean, worse than that, but this was a company that was performing. What we're selling today is a different company. You're comparing chalk and cheese, you see? And that is part of the deception of the people discussing this matter now. They're discussing Grenlec in the context of a profitable, ideally run company, well managed, well organized, producing almost at full capacity. Today, forgetting or disregarding, not forgetting, knowingly disregarding what existed back then. And that is a deception of the NNP. And people like Mr. Boson, it is that deception. Remember, Boson was part of the Ministry of Finance at the time. And people like Boson must appreciate that sometimes what goes around comes around. You must remember that. That once and for all, during that period, and as indicated by the tape, the state of the company as examined by not just Grenadian persons in terms of the political interests, but experts from international bodies and people with legal knowledge examining the very company, stated what a dilapidated state it was in. So therefore the selling price at which and the negotiating terms and conditions would have been different. Pablo, we are also looking at a different time. The technology has been changing. The issue of renewables, they are being a lot more efficient. You see, and that is the difficulty. Sometimes when you hear people talking about the cost of production, 26 years ago, renewables was in a different state. Today, renewables in the state of technology has changed greatly. And so the presence of renewables and the viability of renewable energy from various sources, the technology has changed drastically and has caused the cost of production and the ability to access that kind of, utilize those renewable sources have been very, very different. So it is this ingenious, it is not truthful.
That's a nice word.
Yes, being disingenuous. And let me tell you, brother nurse, right?
You're being very diplomatic.
The Grenadian brother, who is, he's an expert. One of the better professional persons dealing with this matter has demonstrated what the people of Grenada were into and where they have gotten in the negotiation. Brother, this is a company, when the NDC was negotiating with Grenlec, you see, that is the deception in which these people are operating in. That is the deception in which the government of Grenada, the NNP administration is operating. They are not recognizing that people are seeing through what they are talking about. People know, speak to professional people, speak to brother nurse. This thing has to be negotiated, brother. If we as a people need to change this paradigm in which we're going to operate with the Grenlec and the shares, and that is why the NDC has been very forthright. And let me say it to the party leader. It is this kind of leadership that will allow, and the NDC was very clear. You remember we came out here, brother. As soon as the statement came out from Grenlec, the NDC was the first organization to break that in the public, to bring this information and to draw the attention of the public that we are picking up this vibes, that this is happening. That was in December. Nobody said a word. I heard the government of Grenada through the Mr. Gregory Bowen yesterday, indicating in the parliament of our country that they could not have spoken, not until the 29th and some crap like that. But the very same notion of could not have spoken on the issue before, the very matter that was brought to the public attention and passed in the parliament yesterday was dated the 21st of December. You understand the deceitfulness of this, brother? This matter was backdated to the 21st, but he said he couldn't speak to it not until the 29th. Why do you think Grenlec issued a statement after the 21st? Because the negotiations had been completed. So to come with an excuse, it is pathetic. It is again, it is lying to us. To put it bluntly, these people are not being truthful to us. And what else are they lying to us about? Every single time we have proven that they have not been truthful on this matter. As I said yesterday, they're talking about they couldn't speak before the 29th and the 30th. And then they came in the press conference. Brother, this agreement was a done deal on the 21st. This is what they passed in the parliament yesterday. So to speak to know as if to say, when Grenlec issued a statement on the 23rd or 24th, they were speaking out of turn and they broke the agreement. The thing was already signed off on. So who is lying to who? You see, that is the nature of the NNP administration. Total disregard for the people of Grenada and for people who can reason and analyze, and total disregard for the tax-paying public. Because after all, they owe it to us. They have a duty of care. They have a duty of care to we, the people who have elected them. Whether or not we voted for them, Pablo, personally, that is irrelevant. The people of Grenada elected you.
True.
So you owe it to us. It is not your private estate, Kit Mitchell and Gabriel Bowen. It's not your private estate. Grenada wasn't left in no will for you, brother. None of you.
While we're on that, we hear a lot of talk about the money, where the money came from, and we hear an explanation being given that there's been transfer of funds from projects that had been budgeted for in the 2020 budget that were not implemented, and as a consequence of that, these monies were diverted. Do you know that to be a standard practice? Because it gives the impression that when you budget these monies, it's like you have these monies sitting there, and if for whatever reason a project doesn't come through, then you can just take that money from here and just put it into something else. And someone has asked the question whether the claim that they're making, if that is to be the case, whether such a decision contradicts Section 77 of the Constitution, which speaks to how you handle with funds that have been appropriated for particular projects.
Right, for particular purposes. That has been declared in the Constitution. In fact, I think this is going to be a subject of litigation. The leader of the opposition has indicated his intention to take this matter to the court, and let the courts help us to determine if there has been any misuse of what should be the constitutional realm within which the government of Grenada is to operate. So I'm happy that that matter is going to be going that route. Pablo, it also speaks in large measure to how wrong the NNP has dealt with the business of the people of Grenada. It speaks to a notion of secrecy, disregard, disrespect, no accountability, no transparency in what is people's business. We do not have any reason to have any trust in what the government of Grenada is telling us anymore. Because in every instance, and in this particular instance, we have demonstrated at the NDC press conference, we had demonstrated, Brother Kennedy Roberts had demonstrated by calculating the figures to show that even in the most optimistic, even if every single one of these projects, the revenue so derived was there, it could not have been possible to derive the total amount that were claimed that was paid from those sources. So those calculations, I mean, I don't want to go through them now because I don't think that is, we have debunked that already. So those things were not possible. And they're not true. And it's that kind of deceit, that kind of lie and tomfoolery that they feel that they could pull wool over everybody's eye. But people are wising up. People are seeing through these fly-by-night efforts. Those efforts are not good. And we are clearly in a different position today and this matter going forward. And that is why the NDC has been very forceful in this, leading it from the front, and that is why I continue to thank the party leader and the support from the national executive and the leadership of the party on this matter, because I continue to see the NDC leading the charge and demonstrating to the public that we are well aware. And that is why from time to time, you notice what we have done from the start of this matter. We break the news and we put it out there. And then we start to put out bits of information because we are very well aware. And we have been advocating now. We have gotten to the stage of advocating an approach We didn't just say it, but we have said to the public, we are now the shareholders. Where do you want us to go with this? We are proposing that you make particular arrangements for certain sections of our economic strata to empower young people. This is about an opportunity that we have to empower the people of Grenada to earn and to increase their income generating potential. It has been done in the past. The PRG had done it. When the Republic Bank, well, not Republic Bank, but what was National Commercial Bank shares were being privatized, it was done. The very Grenlec experience has been one that have allowed that. The RBDT shares have been examples where these things have worked. So the people of Grenada have a responsibility to know. And those persons must be given special opportunities to own shares in what is now the shares that the government of Grenada now owns. And that is what we've been advocating in the public, you know. That is a kind of different approach to governance that the National Democratic Congress has been advocating for. As against what NNP has been doing. Yes, that is what we've been doing.
So, Mr. Thomas.
Yes, Pablo.
Yes, I know you have to leave us shortly. Any input on that issue and
Yes, I just wanted to say a little on that on that matter. What I mean, Phillip has expounded quite well on the matter, and I think Phillip and the PRO, they have been doing a fantastic job in terms of educating the Grenadian people on the matter, and we have to continue. But Pablo, what I have observed on the ground as I travel throughout the country, people has lost confidence in this government. They don't believe that the information that the government is putting out there is true. And it's unfortunate when you are called upon to lead your country and the people has lost confidence in you. The people are judging this present administration based on the information that was given on the whole question of the oil production and where we are today with it. So in light of this, people are very skeptical. Whatever the government say these days, they are taking it with a pinch of salt, or sometimes, as I like to say, a pound of salt in this day and age. And I don't know how the government will build some moral authority to speak in an authoritative mood on that subject. People has really lost confidence. And I'm very grateful that we are doing the appropriate research and feeding the people with the appropriate information. Not only is the NDC that is advocating that per se, but we also have people like Brother Codrington Hood. People are writing in the papers, people are speaking in the various houses.
He was on a program here last week.
Lovely, and people are giving different information to what the government is giving. I think people have more confidence in the alternative information in regards to the whole issue on the Grenlec matter. I think that's all I would like to see.
Yes.
Pablo, I would have liked.
Yeah. Before you go, Phillip, you're living with him too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Listen, before you guys leave here, talking about people having confidence in the alternative information, this issue has brought to the fore how much NDC has not done a good job of really making people aware of what they've been doing. Because I'm telling you, the information that has been forthcoming as regards the policy, the process and the establishment of a policy position, the whole issue of where the government was at with its renewable agenda and so on. I mean, people didn't know that. It's only as this thing happened they know that these things are coming out in the public domain. NDC has to ensure that going forward, that doesn't continue to be the case. You spoke earlier on about you being out there and connecting with the people. That's one of the reasons why I chose to play that clip that I call Linkage as part of the conversation here this evening. But NBC had to do a better job of that. Because if this thing didn't happen, you know, the nation wouldn't have been knowing about this energy policy that the NDC had established, and so NDC had to do a better job at that. So that, quote unquote, that alternative information that you see people look at what you're admitting here. People have more confidence in the alternative information. Where is the alternative information coming from? NDC. So if NDC had been doing that when they were there, you know, they would have had the confidence of the people. Take it in.
Pablo, yes.
I see Phillip want to say something too.
All right, Phillip, go ahead.
Well, let me say, Pablo, and that is why we're here. We are here sharing through your media, right? And any other media that we get, right? Your medium is an important one, and we continue to share it. And let's face it, sometimes it is difficult. You're damn if you do and you're damn if you don't. Because sometimes they will accuse you of only blowing your trumpet. I mean, I remember us going out on the campaign trail and advocating on many, many issues. And until it come to bite us, that is when people recognize it. I could tell you one that will come to bite us just now. And I will recall, and I'm sure you would recall, anytime you heard me speaking in the public before, the issue of marketing board and the purchase of that property in Grenville for the price at which they purchase it. You're going to see what will happen just now, because we are aware of what is happening right now. And let me assure you, the very price that was paid, the interest rate that has now accrued on that loan, these are issues that we campaign on. You remember, sometimes you're damn if you do and you're damn if you don't. You remember, we challenged the government of Grenada and the land policies towards the Rex Grenadian. When this thing come back to bite us is when we just say, well, we didn't hear it that time and a little talk about it. And in a similar way, I remember those issues coming to the fore. Those issues of shares, of policy, this OS policy arrangement in renewables, whilst this was well negotiated with expert assistance from the Organization of American States, this thing was made public in many ways. However, I agree that we didn't say it loud enough, because now that the matter is in our face and it really backing into our hearts, now is when we're taking heed. So I agree that we need to say more, but we need also recognize that sometimes we only listen when the thing is in the pocket, it's in the belly. That's when we just start to take notice. So I am fully in agreement with you. We continue to say more, and I want to thank you for making your medium available to us to be here to share the word. And we will continue to do that, comrade. And let me tell you, Pablo, I'm available on issues of national importance, especially if they come into that sphere where I have a certain amount of professional capacity, without adding any political spin to it. I am quite prepared and willing to share on issues of that nature.
Okay. Well, there's two platforms available for that kind of conversation with Gem FM. You have the Comfort Zone on a Saturday afternoon, and usually on a Friday evening, there is Talking Points. Talking Points is another one. We've had Kaji has been here. We've had who else? We've had Sandra Ferguson and so on. There's a range of people do come here to speak on issues of national importance. And it's a pleasure to have you. And let's not wait until campaign time. You know, as you say, you in the people face.
Campaigns every time.
Yes, stay in the face.
Yes, Pablo, thanks a lot. It was a pleasure being here, Pablo, and I'm looking forward to be back again. And let me tell you that we are building this is a new NDC, a brand new NDC that we are building there, and we will definitely, if we want to present ourselves as the alternative to govern this country, then we have to give the alternative information, and both of them go hand in hand. We cannot just sit down there and wait until the election is here, but we will be in your face also. So I thank you very much for offering us this platform, this particular medium, and I look forward to working with you again.
Yeah, man. All right.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, man.
Have a good afternoon.
All right. Peace. All right.